नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरये। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। Hare Krishna. So today we are looking at an overview of Canto 10 of Srimad Bhagavatam. So before we begin, let us take the blessings of Srila Prabhupada and all our acharyas and then hear from Srimad Bhagavatam. Let us do Mangalacharan. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam ena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam ena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Bhuter Mahadbiya ima puro vibhu nirmaya shete yadamushu purusha. Bhunkter gunamsho dasashodasatmaka solang krashishta bhagavan vachamsi me. Shri Krishna Sharanam Sharanagatam Khatha Amritam Satatapibatam Bhakti Vedanta Marga Panktanam Sarvaloka Rishi Deva Janna Prasannam. Sarvaloka Rishi Deva Janna Prasannam. Jai Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagwan Ki Jai Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani Ki Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrind Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. So with the blessings of Shri Shri Radha Gopinath, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev and all our Shiksha Gurus, let us have a brief overview of Canto 10 of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we all know that Canto 10 is all about Krishna. So it's going to be very beautiful and very sweet as we hear about Krishna, and which is for our own purification, and it glorifies Krishna and it is for his pleasure. So with this mood and approach, let us look at Canto 10. So Srimad Bhagavatam represents the beautiful form of Krishna, it is said. So Srimad Bhagavatam is not different from Sri Krishna himself. It is a literary incarnation. And the different cantos are compared to the different parts of Lord Krishna. So cantos 1 and 10, cantos 1 and 2 represent his lotus feet. And then 3 and 4 represent his legs. Then Canto 5 represents his waist. Canto 6 represents his heart. Then Cantos 7 and 8 represent his both hands. Then Canto 9 represents his neck. And Canto 10 represents his beautiful face, as we can see on the screen. And especially in Canto 10, chapters 29 to 33 represent his beautiful smile. And then Canto 11 represents his forehead, and Canto 12 represents his crown. So that's the whole beautiful form of Sri Krishna. And Canto 10 is the biggest of all the cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. So it is said that Srimad Bhagavatam has in overall 335 chapters. And out of that, Canto 10 has 90 chapters. So that is nearly 1/3 of the whole of Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's how expansive it is. And Canto 10 also represents the Ashraya Tattva of Lord Krishna. That is, Lord Krishna who gives shelter. So each of the cantos, they also have a specific tattva that they represent, like Poshana and Udaya, like that. So like that, Canto 10 represents Ashraya Tattva. Although even across the other cantos, Lord Krishna gives his shelter and protection, but especially in Canto 10, we can see that, just in all its glory. And to the devotees who represent the Ashrit Tattva. But at the same time, when the devotees offer so much love and when they serve Krishna, then what happens? Krishna takes the shelter of his pure devotees. He comes under their control. Then he himself becomes the Ashrit. And that is what we really see in the beautiful pastimes of Canto 10. And let us try to see who Krishna is, and then we can appreciate these beautiful leelas, why he does them, and what is the deeper meaning behind all his leelas. So Canto 10 has 3 parts. So from chapters 1 to 40, we see the beautiful pastimes of Lord Krishna in Vrindavan. So that's his Vrindavan leela. Then from Canto 41 to 50. And actually, the chapter 40 is like a transition where Krishna and Balram are going to Mathura. So chapters 1 to 40 represent the Vrindavan leela. Then 41 to 50, we see the Mathura leela, all the pastimes of Lord Krishna in Mathura. And then from 51 to 90, we see the pastimes of the Lord in Dwaraka. So that's the Dwaraka leela. And our acharyas explain that actually Shukdev Goswami, he doesn't really explain all the leelas of Krishna, because he's speaking from his mind and what he remembers. Already 4.5 days have gone when Shukdev Goswami has been hearing. So there's really not so much time left, but he portrays Lord Krishna's pastimes. He speaks about them. And our acharyas explain that there are even more leelas of Lord Krishna in Swargaloka, and even in Brahmaloka there are even more leelas. So, and Srila Prabhupada in one of the purports, he says that we really can't explain everything about Krishna because we are so limited, and Krishna is unlimited. So how can we capture him and just say with whatever knowledge we have? So if Shukdev Goswami himself cannot, then where are all of us? So we have very limited potential, but we are trying to see what we can read so that, what we hear from our gurus and as given to us by Srila Prabhupada and through his beautiful books. So we are trying to absorb a tiny little bit and what lessons we can learn and how we can serve Krishna. So that is our approach. Now, over the next 3 days, between today to Sunday, we will focus on the Vrindavan leela of Sri Krishna, that is chapters 1 to 40. Even though that is so much, we will try and see how much we can. And in a nutshell, first let us see what is the essence of the Vrindavan leela. So before we go into each chapter and see, the chapter-wise, what is happening, let us get what's the essence of the Vrindavan leela. So the Vrindavan leela portrays the sweetest of Lord Krishna's pastimes. Although whatever Lord Krishna does is so sweet and beautiful, but in Vrindavan, it is even sweeter. All his pastimes are so sweet, and his sweet dealings with all his devotees, the way they love him, the way they surrender to him, the way they serve him, and the sweetness of the whole Vrindavan Dham. So, Dham means not just the land, but it's his body, it's the Lord's body, his qualities, his names, everything. And throughout these, the Vrindavan pastimes, we can see the beauty of Vrindavan that is described everywhere. The trees, how they are bending down to serve Krishna, the creepers, and when they hear Krishna's flute, how happy they become. And then the rivers are flowing, and then when they hear Krishna's flute, they just become stunned. And then the mountains are echoing, and then the bees are all swarming around, and they go around chasing Krishna's fragrant garlands. And then we see the fragrant breeze that carries the aroma of all the lotus flowers that are blooming in the lakes of Vrindavan. And then we see the clear sky, the autumnal sky. After the rains, how the sky just clears up, and how the lakes and the water are all so crystal clear. And they make themselves so beautiful for Krishna to have his pastimes. And then the beauty of the moonlight and the beauty of all the residents of Vrindavana. So Mother Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj, all the gopas, all the beautiful gopis who love Krishna, who see him as their life and soul, all the animals, the cows, the monkeys, all the deer, how everyone just loves Krishna and they surrender to him. And they all want to love Krishna more than anything else. So we see all this in the Vrindavan leela. And then we also see Lord Krishna's special mercy to the demigods and the demons and to all his devotees. Because we see how Lord Brahma or Lord Indra, when they become puffed up and think that they are the controllers, then Lord Krishna, like a very affectionate father, who corrects the child, like that he tries to give them a little punishment and then they realize their mistake. Oh, no, I was very proud. I am not the controller. Supreme Lord is Shri Krishna. Then they surrender to him. So that way Lord Krishna shows his mercy towards them. And then to the demons, even though the demons come to attack Krishna, because of Krishna's touch, they become purified and they become liberated. So when Krishna kills the demons, it is actually a blessing for them. And it is also said that all these demons that we see in the Vrindavan leela, they all also represent different anarthas that we have, like pride and envy and anger and all that. So when we serve Krishna and we get Lord Krishna's touch on us, then those anarthas, they can be removed, just as how the demons were killed. And then we see that how, Krishna, he does these pastimes for his own sweet pleasure, for his own sweet will and for his own pleasure. And Lord Krishna is not subject to any material conditions. So we have to really understand this when we approach Canto 10. Because there are so many wonderful pastimes. And if we try to see them with our materialistic point of view, and if we think, oh, in this world, this is how this happens, then why is Krishna doing that? He is the Supreme Lord. Then we will be wrong. So our acharyas give the example of how, when Lord Shiva, he drinks poison. If we try to drink poison, will we survive? We will die just the very minute. So the acharyas, they give an example, to say. So like that, Lord Krishna's pastimes are absolutely on the spiritual platform. They are all, done by Lord Krishna's Yogamaya potency, his spiritual energy. She personally assists Lord Krishna through all these pastimes. So it is at a completely different realm, which we can't even imagine or think about. So we should never try to, either compare it with our material world or try to imitate it here. Because then we will have a very big destruction. Because we are not qualified. And Lord Krishna, he is the controller of the whole universe, of all of creation. So his power is so great. And we see that through all the leelas of Vrindavan. And finally, by hearing these beautiful pastimes of Lord Krishna, we have to be inspired to go deeper into Srimad Bhagavatam, to read more and to relish those beautiful Sanskrit verses that we see in Srimad Bhagavatam. They are just out of the world. And sometimes with the English language or any other language, it might be difficult to translate the exact words, but nevertheless, our acharyas, they give us the pathway, and we are trying to follow that, and we are trying to read and speak from whatever we can. And ultimately, hearing Lord Krishna's pastimes should lead us to serve him, to serve his devotees, to serve our Guru with more love and with more surrender. So that's the mood and the approach to Canto 10. So with this feeling in our heart that we are going to humbly look at Lord Krishna's beautiful pastimes from Canto 10. So, chapter 1, so that's chapter 1, which is titled The Advent of Lord Krishna. So, in this chapter, Parikshit Maharaj is speaking to Shukdev Goswami, and he's saying, Shukdev Goswami, you have explained so much about all the different dynasties of the Moon dynasty, the Sun dynasty, the appearance of Lord Ram, then, all the different kings and characters which happened in 9th Canto. And then now he says, please explain to me about Lord Krishna. Explain to me about his brother Baladev. Why did they appear? What did they do? What was their leelas? How long did they live? Please tell me about all this. And I'm very eager to hear about all this, about Lord Krishna. And then Shukdev Goswami says that, you have the right approach. You are very eager to hear about Krishna, and that means you have a very clear intelligence. And there is this beautiful verse, Nivrittatashe Rupagiyamanat, which says that, who would not want to hear about Krishna Katha? Unless one is a butcher or one who's killing his own soul. So, it really specifies the importance of glorifying Krishna, that we should all hear about him. And Shukdev Goswami says that, there are 3 types of men who are purified, or 3 types of people who are purified when we speak and hear about Krishna. The speaker, the one who inquires and asks questions, and all the people in general who hear. So they are all purified. And then Shukdev Goswami, he says that it is like the Ganges that purifies all the different planetary systems, the upper, middle, and the lower. Similar to that, when we all hear Krishna Katha, how it purifies all of us. And then he goes on to narrate the different pastimes. So he begins with how Mother Earth, when she was overburdened with all the demons, she took the form of a cow and she went to Lord Brahma and she said, please protect me. Then Lord Brahma, along with the other demigods, they all went to see Lord Vishnu, Kshirodakashayi Vishnu. And they said, please, protect us. There is a lot of disturbances happening on earth. And then at that time, Lord Vishnu says, I will personally appear on planet Earth and I will, kill all the demons. And at the same time, all the demigods should also appear. And they should all take different roles in Vrindavan to assist me in my pastimes. And then the Lord also says that his spiritual energy, Yogamaya, will also appear, and she should assist him in all his pastimes. So before this, the demigods, they offer the Purusha Sukta prayers to Lord Vishnu, and then he gives them this answer. And then on hearing this, then Lord Brahma and they all return. And after this, we see how we'll just skip a few things and we will go into the pastimes. So of how Vasudeva and Devaki, they were married, and then Kamsa, he was taking them on his chariot. And it is said that Devaki is the cousin sister of Kamsa. Sometimes we might think that, she's the own sister. When we actually read Bhagavatam, we realize that she is the cousin sister of Kamsa. Devaki's father's name is Devaka. And he gave like 400 elephants and 10,000 horses and, so many chariots and maidservants, all of them to Vasudeva as a dowry for the wedding. And so this was a custom, in those days. And it was all part of the tradition. And while driving the chariot, so we go to that. Yeah. So the next slide, we see how as Kamsa was driving the chariot, he hears a voice that says that the 8th son of Devaki would kill him. And immediately on hearing this, Kamsa, he takes hold of Devaki's hair and he's ready to go and kill her. So that's what we see in this beautiful slide. The painting, how lovely they've really captured that moment where Kamsa is trying to kill Devaki. And then Vasudeva, he immediately stops and then he says, "This is abominable. How can you kill your own sister? She's a woman. She's your sister. Don't kill her. It's only her 8th child that is going to kill you. Don't worry. I will bring all my children and I will give them to you." So on hearing this, then Kamsa is a little bit pacified and he says, "Okay." And then he lets them go and he just takes them. And then what happens? Vasudeva, he brings the first child, Kirtiman, to Kamsa. And Kamsa, he returns the child and he says, he's only the first child. He's not going to kill me. It's only the 8th baby that's going to kill me. So you can take Kirtiman with you. I'm not worried. Saying that, he dismisses Vasudeva off. And at that time, then later what happens, Narada comes and then he tells Kamsa, "Be careful. Now all the demigods have started appearing and the demons are all going to be killed. So you better be prepared for what's going to happen." And on hearing this, now Kamsa is agitated. So now what he does, he imprisons Devaki and Vasudeva and he puts them in a prison. And then he kills all the first 6 children, one after the other, as Devaki gave birth. And Kamsa was Kalanemi in his previous birth, who was actually killed by Lord Vishnu. So hearing this from Narada, Kamsa and all his demons, they all became very envious of Lord Vishnu. So they always thought that, like Vishnu is like the enemy of them. That he even imprisoned his own father, Ugrasena. And at the end of this chapter, in some of the special notes, Srila Prabhupada also explains that how when Lord Krishna, when he was, exhibited all these pastimes, it only represented a partial manifestation of his opulence was present on the earth. So Lord Krishna's opulence is so much more that we can't even, comprehend. So I just wanted to mention that special point that Srila Prabhupada has mentioned. And now what happens after killing 6 of Lord, Krishna's, Mother Devaki's children, then the demigods appear in the prison And now they are offering the beautiful Garbhastuti prayers. So that is in chapter 2, prayers by the demigods. So Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, accompanied by Narada and other, Lord Varuna, Indra, and so many other sages, they all approach the prison and they start offering these beautiful prayers to welcome Lord Krishna in the womb of Mother Devaki. And here they offer very beautiful prayers. And they say, in one of the verses, the first one, they say that how Krishna is the supreme truth. And we cannot achieve him without being truthful. All about Krishna is, unless one is truthful, they cannot achieve his favor. So we have to be very honest in our dealings and whatever we do. And then they say how you never deviate from your vows. So that is how Lord Krishna remains truthful. So that is another point that they say. And then they say, you are the beginning of all truths, and we surrender to you. Give us protection. Please appear. So saying that, the demigods, they pray. And then what happens is, I'm just trying to skip a little bit here because there is just so much. So Devaki looked so beautiful and effulgent in the presence because in the prison because Krishna was about to appear. But before Lord Krishna appeared, what happens is Lord Sankarshana or Lord Baladev, he appears in Mother Devaki's womb, and then he is transferred to the womb of Mother Rohini in Gokula. And from there, Yogamaya, who is born as the daughter of Yashoda, she is going to be brought here into Mother Devaki's womb. So Lord Krishna, he gives all these orders. So he's preparing everything before his appearance. So accordingly, what happened when Devaki was pregnant with her 7th child, it looked like she went through a miscarriage. But actually what happened was Yogamaya had transferred Lord Baladev from her womb to the womb of Mother Rohini. And then Yogamaya herself, she appeared as the daughter of Mother Yashoda, so as Krishna's sister. But in the meantime, what also happens is, from Vasudev's mind, Lord Krishna, he transfers himself into the mind of Devaki, and then from Devaki's heart, Lord Krishna appears. And there's a beautiful verse that says how the whole atmosphere was so pleasant, and the sages were all so happy, the cities were so festive. And just like how the sun rises on the east, like that, how Lord Krishna appeared. The demigods were showering flowers and the clouds were thundering mildly. The waves of the ocean were so, calm. And we'll just hear that verse because it's just so beautiful. Mumachor munayo devo sumanamsi mudanvitaha mandam jaladhara jagajuranusagaram nishite tama udbhute jayamane janardane devakyam devarupinyam vishnu sarvaguhashrayah. So as the super soul who is present in everyone's heart, Lord Krishna appeared from Devaki's heart. And how did he appear? He appeared with 4 hands holding Shankha, Chakra, Gada, Padma, and he was wearing a shining yellow garment and so much jewelry, armlets and necklaces and bangles and anklets, and wearing a helmet. And he appeared so beautiful and effulgent. And seeing this, Vasudeva and Devaki were a bit bewildered. They were like, this is Krishna, this is Supreme Lord. And, they could feel that, and they were wondering, what if Kamsa knows this? He will come and snatch this child away from me. And then what happens? Vasudeva and Devaki, they both offer prayers. And then Lord Krishna says that I appeared in this form just to remind you of your previous births. Earlier, you were in the millennium of Swayambhuva, Manu, you were Prishni and Sutapa. And you did a lot of austerities. And I appeared before you and I asked you what benediction you want. And at that time you said that you want a child exactly like me. And so I appeared as Prishni Garbha. And then in the next millennium, what happens? There were Aditi and Kashyapa. Then again the Lord appeared as their child, as Upendra, who was, because of his dwarf form, he came to be known as Vamandev. And then now this is the 3rd time I'm appearing as your child. So please know that I am Lord Vishnu, who is your child, the Supreme Lord, and meditate on me. And by constantly thinking about me, you will come back to me. So he says this. And then what happens? Let's move on. There is just so much to cover. We will try our best. So that was chapter 3. That's the birth of Krishna. We saw how the Lord appeared. And then let's move on. So then what happens is, Vasudeva, by the order of the Lord, he takes Lord Krishna to Gokula. So when he's going, the Naga says, he gives like an umbrella because it's raining, and then Yamuna gives way. And then Vasudeva travels along and he goes to Nanda Maharaj's house and he places little Krishna next to Mother Yashoda, and he takes her baby girl, who is the Yogamaya of the Lord. So he takes the baby girl and he returns to the prison and he puts the baby safely next to Devaki, and then again they all become shackled with the iron, shackles, and they are bound again. Now all this was orchestrated by Lord Krishna's spiritual energy, the Yogamaya, so that all the doorkeepers, they were all put to sleep. And then after all this happened, they heard the baby crying, which was the girl baby. So immediately they all went and they informed Kamsa. Then Kamsa immediately came and, So then what happened? Kamsa immediately came and he wanted to kill this child, because now this was supposed to be the 8th child. So let's remember, the 7th child was Lord Sankarshana, and then this is the 8th child. So Kamsa knows, okay, this must be Krishna. And then he comes and he takes the child and he just throws the baby against the wall, against a stone. And what happens? Because she's Yogamaya, the potency of the Lord, and she just appears and takes this huge form of Goddess Durga. And then she says, you fool. It's like, this is not ordinary. And then she says that, your enemy has already been born somewhere. And then she just disappears. And then what happens? Kamsa, he doesn't know what to do. And then now he just apologizes to Devaki and Mother Yashoda, and I'm very sorry, just racing. So Kamsa apologizes to Vasudev and Devaki, and then he releases them, and then he just goes back. But then what he does, he speaks to all his ministers who are demons. Now what will demons advise? They advise that let's kill all the children who are born, because we don't know where is the 8th child and who is going to kill. So knowing this, then what happens? Kamsa, he begins a lot of atrocities, and they go about killing all the children who were born around the whole of Yadu dynasty. And, all the Brahmanas and all the people. So basically Kamsa is really acting very arrogant, and he's sending all his demons around. So let's go into the next chapter. So this is all happening in what we saw so far was the setting in Mathura. So now we are really going into what's happening in Vrindavana. So now starts the really, all the lovely leelas of Lord Krishna. So here we see that this chapter, it begins with the bathing ceremony of Krishna. So what happens? Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj, they organize a beautiful festival called as the Nandotsava to, welcome the baby. So they invite all the guests, and there's a whole festive atmosphere. All the gopas and the gopis, they're all so beautifully dressed. And Srila Prabhupada says that, it is very significant to see how the gopis went to see the bathing ceremony of Krishna. They are even elderly gopis, they are friends of Mother Yashoda. Still, the way they were so beautifully dressed with all their garments and earrings and bangles and, carrying gifts and presentations. Imagine there's a baby born, and it's the baby of the king of the cowherd village. So they're all so excited. And here there is a little, note that I would just like to share, that this bathing ceremony, it is like a purification ceremony that is done. So our acharyas explain that, through bathing, the body is purified. And then by performing the purificatory ceremony, one's birth is purified. Then by austerity, our senses are purified. By worship and charity, our material possessions are purified. And then by satisfaction, our mind is purified. And by self-realization, our soul is purified. So this is just something that we read in the Bhagavatam. It's very beautiful. So all the cows were decorated, and, Nanda Maharaj gave charity of cows and lot of gifts and, to the Brahmanas. So he gave them money, he gave them gold, he gave them ornaments and all this, and they were so happy and so jubilant. And the musical instruments were playing, and they all offered blessings to the baby. So that's the sweetest part, because they don't know that this is Lord Krishna, the Supreme Lord himself. He's there like a little cuddly, sweet little baby, and all these gopis and gopas, they come and they give their blessings. And after this, what happens? Nanda Maharaj, he goes to Mathura to pay the taxes. And there, Vasudev meets Nanda Maharaj. And Nanda Maharaj inquires about the wellness of Krishna and Balram. So he's asking, are they all okay? Is everything fine there? And then he says, but don't stay here for too long, because there's going to be a lot of disturbances happening. Because Vasudev knows that, but he is not revealing the whole leela of what happened, how Yogamaya, how he actually went and left Krishna in Nandagaon. He's not saying all that, but he's just very superficially, he's hinting. There's going to be something going on there, just be careful. And around this time now, let's jump back to Vrindavana, and what happens? The first demon who appears. So, Krishna was only about 6 days old. He was a little baby, just a newborn. And around that time, Putana, the demon, we all know this pastime, but just, for our own purification, and it's also nice to hear. So we will quickly run through these pastimes so we can, relish them. So Putana, she appeared like a beautiful woman, and she entered the room of Nanda Maharaj, and she took the baby and she started breastfeeding Krishna, and she had poison on her breasts. And then what happened? And no one stopped her. All this was Yogamaya's arrangement. Because in a normal situation, that wouldn't happen. Anyone cannot just come and take someone's baby and start feeding. But all this was done by the Yogamaya's arrangement. So when Putana took Krishna and she started feeding him, and then what did Krishna do? He immediately just took hold of her breasts and he squeezed her, and he also squeezed her life air out. So just like that, he killed her. And what did Putana do? She just assumed her gigantic form. She came as a beautiful woman, and now when Krishna did this to her, she became huge. And she was running and saying, leave me, leave me. But Krishna wouldn't leave her. So she just ran into the pasturing fields, and in her huge form, she just fell on the ground. And Bhagavatam describes her legs were like, long bridges, and her stomach was like a dried up lake, and her breasts were like the mountains, and she looked so gory and scary. And Krishna was just happily playing on the top of her breast, which was, like a big field. So he was just there. And then Mother Yashoda and Rohini and all the gopis, they all came running, and they saw this, and they were like, oh my God, what is happening? Our little Krishna, who is this lady? Who's lying down here? What's happening to Krishna? So they ran and went and they picked up the baby, and they were chanting mantras, and they wanted to purify Krishna. So that's the irony of the whole thing, isn't it? So what did they do? They bathed Krishna with cow urine, and then they put, the dust that arises from the cows, when the cow walks, they applied that on him, and then with cow dung they applied tilak, and they chanted all types of protective mantras to take care of his senses, his eyes, his nose, his mouth, his hands, when he sits, when he walks. So all this the gopis chanted because they didn't want anything more to happen. So, and then what happens? Nanda Maharaj, on returning, like from Mathura, he's walking, and then he sees this, and by the time these gopis, they've all, the people of Vraja, they've cut Putana into pieces, and they've just thrown into the fields, and they burnt. But what happened, because of Krishna's touch, when smoke comes, when a dead body is burning, how bad it would be. But because of Krishna's touch, that smoke gave out such fragrance, like when we have incense sticks, like agarbatti, like that. And when Nanda Maharaj was walking, and then he saw this huge thing, and when he heard all this, he realized, oh, Vasudev warned me. He knew something. Okay, now I have to take care of my child. So that happened, and then Putana, she was liberated, and because she actually fed Krishna, like a mother, she came. And because of that, Krishna liberated her, and she achieved the position of a nurse and a maid servant who assisted Mother Yashoda in Golok Vrindavan. So like a mother, like that. And in Vaikuntha Loka, she attained the position of a mother. So then Nanda Maharaj came home and he took little Krishna on his lap and, he just smelled his forehead. He just smiled and, he felt peaceful. Oh, my baby is saved. And then now we move on to the next chapter, chapter 7. So we see 3 pastimes here. The Shakata Bhanjana, the killing of Trinavarta, and the showing of the universe in Lord Krishna's mouth to Mother Yashoda. So twice he does that, and this is the first time. So now Krishna is, he's a little baby, and then so once what happened, Mother Yashoda, she was actually preparing for another ceremony. So now Krishna started turning around. So when he starts turning around, they perform this festival called Uttana ceremony. So she arranged and, a lot of guests had come and she was looking after all of them. And she had left the little baby in a cradle under a cart, which was Shakatasura. But what did Krishna do? With just his soft feet, his feet were like soft leaves, Bhagavatam describes. And he just kicked it like that with his toe. And what happened? The whole cart collapsed and it turned upside down, and all the vessels and whatever there were in the cart, they all scattered all over the place, and the wheels went running somewhere, the spokes went running somewhere, and there was this huge thunderous sound. And all the gopas, they all saw this. And then when the gopis came running, what happened? What happened to Krishna? And they saw this and they were like stunned. What? How did this happen? And the gopas said, no, we saw it. Krishna actually kicked with his foot and the cart just turned down. And these gopis were like, what? He's a little baby. How can he do that? So, they were just bewildered and they thought maybe it's some bad planet that is, just attacking Krishna. And then again, they started reciting, Vedic hymns, and they performed a yajna. And Nanda Maharaj gave charity. So like this, they were constantly very protective of Krishna. They wanted to take care of him with so much affection. Then once, when Krishna was about 1 year old, Mother Yashoda was just patting him on her lap, and she was just having a good old time with her little baby. And suddenly, Krishna became so heavy, like a mountain, and she didn't know what is going on, and then she just placed Krishna down. And then she thought, this is something weird. Why is he so heavy? And then she started worshipping Lord Narayana. And she thought, please, and she just, like that, she just started praying. And then, when the baby was on the ground, what happened? There was this whirlwind demon called Trinavrata, who is the servant of Krishna, servant of Kamsa. Yes, in a way, he is a servant of Krishna as well. So, Trinavrata, the whirlwind, he came and he just grabbed Krishna and he carried him high into the sky, raising all the dust from the whole of Gokula. And it was like dense dark because of all the rising dust. And Yashoda couldn't find the baby and they were all like wondering what's happening. While Trinavrata had taken little Krishna up into the sky. And Krishna, what did he do? He just caught Trinavrata's neck and then he just choked him like that. And then Trinavrata, bump, he just fell on the ground. That's it. So our acharyas also explained that, at any point Krishna didn't have to exert any extra effort or extra energy to kill any of the demons. It was just like, a kick with his foot, or he would just throw them like that, or he would just catch them like that, and they would just be killed and liberated. So Then Trinavrata fell. And then after seeing this again, Nanda Maharaj, he thought, oh, we must have done some previous pious activities. That's why our Krishna has come back safe now. Because imagine the demon fell and nothing happened to Krishna. So, they were so bewildered. And then after this, Mother Yashoda, she took Krishna on her lap and she was just, feeding him. And then she was just looking at him and, they were having a little affectionate exchange. And Krishna just yawned. And when he yawned, suddenly Mother Yashoda, she saw the whole universe in his mouth, all the planetary systems. So she saw the whole universe and the sun and the moon and the stars and the planets and, the rivers and the seas and everything. And she was just bewildered and she just closed her eyes because she couldn't take it. And then somehow by Yogamaya's arrangement, she again then just came back to her senses. So now we move on into chapter 8. Oh my God, we are already 8:25. We might go a little longer, but we will try our best to see how much we can cover today. So in chapter 8, we begin with the naming ceremony of Krishna. So inspired by Vasudeva, Garga Muni, who is the family priest of the Yadus, so he came to see Nanda Maharaj. And Nanda Maharaj knew that Garga Muni is Adokshaja, or that he is not an ordinary person. Do we remember that even Lord Krishna has the name Adokshaja, which means he is beyond our perception. They are we cannot understand them. So Garga Muni was also a great astrologer, so he knew everything about, what's going on. And he could predict, the life of Krishna and everything. So Nanda Maharaj asked him to perform the reformatory activity. So it is called as a samskara, when the baby is, as he's going, to give the name for the child. But Garga Muni said that, if I do this, I'm the family priest of the Yadus, then Kamsa will get to know that the child that is here is Krishna and he will come and attack. So, it's not advisable to do it like that. Then Nanda Maharaj says, okay, let's have a secret ceremony. So just in the cowshed, Garga Muni gives, so that's the beautiful, painting, where Garga Muni, he's giving the name to Balram and Krishna. He says, the elder brother, your son, Rohini's son, because he gives pleasure to everyone, Rama, and also because of his bodily strength, Bala, he will be known as Balarama. And then for Krishna, he says, in every millennium your son appears as an incarnation. And previously he appeared in the colors of white, yellow, and red, and now he has appeared with a black complexion, and so his name will be Krishna. And our acharyas also explain, and even Srila Prabhupada says, that Krish means attract, and Na also means Ananda or bliss. So the one who attracts and gives bliss, Krishna. So that is also the meaning of Lord Krishna's beautiful name. So what happens after this? And he also says, Baladev's name is Sankarshana because he unites two families, the family of Vasudeva and Nanda Maharaj. And then he also says that your son will have many names and forms and qualities, and he will, he will act very auspiciously for all of you. So this is the prediction of Garga Muni, which Nanda Maharaj is constantly going to remember later on. And then now we go into Krishna's beautiful, pastimes as a baby. So the way he's crawling with his ankle belts tinkling, and, he would go behind some gopi thinking that, she's his mother. And then seeing that gopi is someone else, then they will run back to their mothers, Yashoda and Rohini. And then sometimes, they would be covered with mud. And then they would go and they would pull the tails of all the calves. And, the calves would just drag them along. So these were all some of the very sweet pastimes that Krishna did as a baby. And then when he started slowly walking, now the mischief becomes more. Yeah, so at every stage, Krishna's leelas become more pleasurable, more exciting, more interesting. So now what does Krishna do? Now he goes and he steals butter from everywhere. Krishna and Balram, they put up different wooden planks, they climb on the top, and then they go and they break the pots, and they steal butter and they start eating, and they give it to the monkeys. And then the gopis, sometimes they come and they complain to Mother Yashoda. And they say, look at what your son is doing everywhere. And here in front of you, he sits like a very nice child. So like that, they come and they complain. And once what happened is part of all these pastimes, the Gopas, they came and they complained to Mother Yashoda. They said, look, your son is eating mud. He's eating the earth. Please go. And then when Mother Yashoda went and she saw Krishna eating mud, she didn't see that, but she wanted to ensure that, he actually ate mud. So she said, open your mouth and show me, let me see if you've eaten mud. Krishna said, no, I didn't. But then she wanted to really see. And then when Krishna opened his mouth, again, Mother Yashoda saw the whole universe and, all the planetary systems, the earth, the moon, the sun. And she could even see herself there and, everything. So on seeing this whole universal form in the mouth of Krishna, Mother Yashoda suddenly felt, oh, this is the Supreme Lord, and now I have to bow down. This is not an ordinary child. And then she just bowed down and she started praying, and started offering prayers to Krishna. And then suddenly by Yogamaya's arrangement, she became overwhelmed with her maternal affection. So we see that how, through Yogamaya's arrangement, the devotees in Vrindavana, they experience very wonderful feelings. She suddenly sees him and then she feels, okay, no, this is my child. But throughout, because Krishna wanted to have that sweet exchange with Yashoda, so he didn't want her to see him as the Lord. So immediately he, changed her appearance and her feelings. So then Parikshit asks, why did, how come Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj, so, this whole thing is a conversation, right, between Shukdev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. So Parikshit Maharaj asks, how come they were so fortunate to have Krishna as their son? And then Shukdev Goswami says that Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda, they are actually Drona and Dhara. They are the eternal parents of Krishna in the spiritual world. They are Nitya Siddhas. So we are all, or normal people are like sadhana siddhas. Through sadhana, they have to. Nitya Siddhas means they are eternal. They are eternal associates of Krishna. So, so Shukdev Goswami says that, and then, okay, I'm just so conscious of the time, but we will try and see how much we can cover. Now we move on to chapter 9, which we all know, which is the famous Damodara leela, where Mother Yashoda is now going to bind Krishna with a rope. So once when Mother Yashoda was churning yogurt, we know this pastime, we'll just hear it very briefly. So Krishna comes to her and then he asks to be fed. And then Mother Yashoda, so she puts the churning rod down and she takes the baby and she starts feeding him. And then she suddenly smells that something is going on in the stove. So she puts Krishna down and she goes there. And immediately Krishna gets angry and he takes a stone and he breaks the pot of yogurt and he creates a whole mess around the place, and then he runs away and he hides inside another room. And he climbs on tops of a wooden mortar and he sits there and he starts eating all the butter and the yogurt and he gives it to all the monkeys around. Then Mother Yashoda, seeing all this, she knows who's done this naughty work. It's this little Krishna. So now she wants to go and catch him. So she takes a stick in her hand and she is running behind. She's trying to go and find where's Krishna. And just by seeing his footprints, like because of all the yogurt, Krishna has walked, So all the yogurt has made footprints in the house. So she follows that and she goes into this room and she sees Krishna on top of a wooden mortar. She said, "Hey, you naughty boy, I'm going to catch you now." And then Krishna runs in fear of Mother Yashoda. So he's running and Mother Yashoda is running behind him, trying to catch him. And he's running and he starts crying and the kajal from his eyes are all coming down. And then finally Mother Yashoda actually catches him. And then now she says, "I'm going to tie you around with a rope." And our acharyas explain that, how so many sages, through so many ages of austerity and penance they have to attain Krishna. And Mother Yashoda, just like that, with her love and affection, she was able to capture him. And then we see a lot of contradictions in this beautiful leela, because he is the Supreme Lord and he is running in fear. And, and thousands of Lakshmis are serving him, but then still he is stealing butter. So we see all this and, our acharyas beautifully explain that this was all because Lord Krishna wanted to have this sweet exchange with Mother Yashoda. And that is why this whole leela was happening. And then Mother Yashoda now, so that's the next slide, we can see this beautiful painting where Mother Yashoda ties Lord Krishna with a rope, with the wooden mortar. But even as she's trying to tie, she cannot. It's like, about 2 fingers short. And then, we've heard this through Krishna's mercy. Finally, she ties him up. And then that leads us into the next chapter. So let's go into the next chapter here. So now what happens? It is the deliverance of the 2 Yamalarjuna trees. So, Parikshit Maharaj is asking, he's asking these questions and then Shukdev Goswami is speaking. So Shukdev Goswami says that once there were 2 sons of Kubera who were called as Manigriv and Nalkuver. And they were, just very proud of themselves. And once on the banks of the Mandakini river, they were just enjoying themselves in the water and they were naked and, with women. And when Narad Muni passed by, they just ignored him. So then Narad Muni, to teach them a lesson, because they were very proud, he cursed them and he said that because you act like a jada, like without any consciousness, like trees, he cursed them to become trees in their next birth. And then he says, like for 100 years, that is according to the measurement of the demigods, you will remain as trees. But even in that curse, Narad Muni gave a blessing. Because at the end of that, they would see Lord Krishna face to face and then they would be delivered. So now at the end of the Damodara leela pastime, what happens? Lord Krishna, he drags the wooden motor to which he was tied up in between the two trees, the Yamalarjuna trees, who are actually Manigriv and Nalkuber. So these are the two trees in the garden of Nanda Maharaj. So when Krishna passes through the two trees, they just appear and they get their original form as beautiful demigods, and then they again offer prayers. And then they tell Krishna, you are the supreme person. Please forgive us because of our pride. We acted, in a different way. But now, Vani Gunanu Katane, there are beautiful verses they offer in prayer. And they say, henceforward, may all our senses be engaged in your service, and let it always be pleasing to you. We now move on to the next chapter, which is the childhood pastimes of Krishna. So we will just do a couple of more chapters and then we will end for today. I know we are past time, but just a few more minutes because there's just a lot to cover, in just 3 days. And unless we cover, we won't be able to get through most of them. So in chapter 11, we see the childhood pastimes of Krishna and how, they are just so beautiful. We have to really go into Srimad Bhagavatam and actually read those verses to really relish them. So sometimes the gopis would, tell Krishna, because now that, he started walking and everything. So they would say dance, and then Krishna will dance for them. They'll say sing, and he will sing. Whatever they said, Krishna would do. And then they would say, go bring some, the wooden articles, like the wooden shoes, and then Krishna will bring that. So he was so cute, and, sometimes if he couldn't lift anything, he will just be standing there. So like that, he did some very wonderful pastimes that really gave a lot of pleasure to all the residents of Vrindavana. And then once we see how a fruit seller had come. And, is that the next one? Okay. Yes, so that's the beautiful pastime of the fruit seller. So a fruit seller had come to see, to the village. And Krishna, he ran with with these two tiny little palms. He carried a lot of grain and he thought he will go and give that and exchange it for fruits. But as he was running, the grains were falling down and just, a few were left in his hand. But still he went and gave that. And the fruit seller, with all her love for Krishna, she just took that and immediately she filled his hands with fruits. And also, the fruit seller, she filled Krishna's hands with fruits. And in return, Lord Krishna filled her basket with jewels and gold and, a lot of opulent things. So our acharyas explain that, when we offer anything with love to Krishna, then he reciprocates it millions of times. He doesn't see how small or what we offer, but he sees our love behind our offering and he reciprocates. So once Mother Rohini, she went to call Krishna and Balram who were playing, and they wouldn't return because they were so happily engaged in playing. And then she came back to Mother Yashoda and said, oh, please, you go and call them. They are not coming. Then Mother Yashoda, she goes and she says, oh Krishna, oh Rama, please come. It's time for you to have your lunch now. Nanda Maharaj is waiting for you. Look at all your friends. They're all so beautifully dressed and, they've bathed, they've showered, and from morning you have been playing. You will be so hungry. Please come home. And then still they don't come, they want to keep playing. And then she says, "Oh Krishna, today is the auspicious day when the Rohini star, that's the star of Krishna, has conjoined with, very auspicious planetary setting. So it's like your birthday, and now we have to celebrate, we have to give charity to Brahmanas. So please come home." So saying like this, she dragged Krishna and Balram home. So this is beautiful verse. Itam yashoda tamasesha shekaram matva sutam sneha nibadhadirnripa haste grihitva saharamam achyutam Nitva swavatam kritavatyato. So saying like this, Mother Yashoda, she brought Ittam Yashoda. So Shukdev Goswami is saying like this, Mother Yashoda dragged Krishna and Balram home, and then they would dress them with beautiful ornaments, and first they give a beautiful bath, and then they dress them and put all types of jewelry, and like that they enjoyed with Krishna. Okay, Krishna is unlimited, and we are trying to speak about him in 1 hour. It's just impossible. We will try our best endeavor. So, and then at this point, we also see that all the Gopas, now they decided, let us not stay here because sometimes there's a lot of demons coming. So let us try and move from this place. So there's this friend of Nanda Maharaj called Upananda. He gives this advice. Then they all move from Gokula, where they were staying, and they go to another place called, again it is all within Vrindavana, just different villages. Now they go to Vrindavana, which is full of gardens and beautiful scenery where Krishna and Balram can play more. So as they are going, they are singing the beautiful pastimes of Krishna and Balram. The gopis are all dressed, and they are riding on the bullock carts, and they go to Vrindavana. Then now we go on into more pastimes of Lord Krishna, where how Krishna and Balram would play in the forest of Vrindavana. So they just they throw stones on the trees, and then the fruits fall down, and then sometimes they wear blankets around them, and they act like animals, and then sometimes they are imitating the voices of all the animals and the birds and the cuckoo birds. And then sometimes, they are just playing football with the fruits. Like this, we see beautiful pastimes of the Lord. And once, now also Krishna and Balram, they started tending the calves. They had grown up little bit. So this is still in the Kaumara leela of Krishna. So they could go and they could herd the calves. And around this time, there was another demon called Vatsasura, who took the form of a calf, and he appeared. And when he appeared, what did Krishna do? He knew it. So he immediately took hold of the calf's hind legs, and he just threw him into the tree, and then he killed and liberated him. And then once, when they were, taking the calves to drink water in a little pond around a little pond of water, and there was this huge Bakasura. So that's what we see here in the form of a duck. And what did Bakasura do? He swallowed Krishna. And just imagine, he actually swallowed Krishna. But Krishna, he became like fire in the throat of Bakasura, and feeling this heat of the fire, what did Bakasura do? He just, he just disgorged, and Krishna just came out. And then with his beaks, he was trying to hurt Krishna again. But Krishna just, he ripped apart his two beaks, and he liberated him just like that. And then all the celestial beings, they showered flowers, and they played kettle drums, and the conch shells were blowing, and then all the gopas, they all came and they hugged Krishna, and then they went home and they would narrate these incidents. And then let's quickly go to the next one, which is the killing of the demon Agasura. So that's chapter 12. So at the beginning of this chapter, we see how Krishna, he wanted to go for a little picnic. So he called all his Gopa friends, like early morning he woke up, and then he played his flute, and then he played the bugle. And then he woke up all his Gopas, and then hundreds and thousands of Gopas and cows, they all came. They came out. And they all had, with their lunch bags and flutes and bugles and herding sticks, they all got ready to go for a picnic. And our acharyas explained that, because Krishna is asankhyathayr. And Srila Prabhupada explains that he is unlimited. So even his calves and gopas, they are unlimited. And even the space he creates for them, even they are unlimited. So it was immeasurable. So that many gopas and cows, they all went with Krishna for the picnic. And although these boys were already decorated with, jewels and ornaments and everything, still they wanted to decorate themselves with leaves and flowers and, bunches of flowers and all that. So sweet, all these gopas with Krishna. And they all went for the picnic. And at that time, Agasura, the demon, he appeared like this huge python. And he opened his mouth, and it looked like as if there was a cave. So all the boys thought, oh, this is a lovely picnic spot. Let's go in and play. And they just went into Agasura's mouth. Krishna knew this is a demon. He tried to stop them, but before that, they all went in. And it is described that, Agasura's, his mouth was open, and the top part of his mouth was touching the sky, and his bottom lip was touching the earth, and his tongue was like a big traffic way, like a road. It was that big, and it was so densely dark inside, and there was smelly air, wind coming from his mouth, because there were like a lot of dead bodies inside the python's stomach. But the cowherd boys just went in thinking it's a picnic spot. They didn't realize. And then Krishna, he was wondering how to save my friends and yet kill the demon. And then Krishna went inside himself and he enlarged himself. And he became so huge. And then Agasura tried to open his mouth and he tried to expand, but he couldn't beyond a certain point. He is limited. He's a demon. Krishna is unlimited. So he just expanded so huge. And then what happened? With that, the demon just couldn't bear it anymore, and his life air just went out of his head just like that, because he got suffocated. He couldn't breathe with Krishna's huge size. And then immediately Krishna glanced over all the dead cowherd boys and calves who were inside Agasura's mouth, and then they all came back to life. And then Agasura as well, because of Krishna's touch, because Krishna went into his mouth, he actually became liberated. And he was liberated like a glaring effulgence, Bhagavatam says. And he was individually appearing in the sky, and then he merged with Krishna's spiritual effulgence. And so it is said that he attained the Sayujya Mukti, but later on verses also describe that Agasura attained the Sarupya Mukti, that is a similar form of, like Lord Vishnu. But except the Sarupya Mukti, whoever attains, they don't have the Srivatsa mark and the Kaustubhajam. They just resemble Lord Vishnu's forms in Vaikuntha. Like that. And then, let's continue. So this leela happened only when Krishna was about 5 years old. Now, seeing all this, Brahma saw this, Lord Brahma. And then he was a little bit bewildered. He was wondering, is this really the Supreme Lord? Who is this little Krishna who's doing so many pastimes? He's killing demons, and then, he's just doing all these wonderful pastimes. I want to test his power. And let's leave it at that. We will continue tomorrow because we've gone way past the time and it's time for the Shayanarati now. So let us see what Lord Brahma does tomorrow. Okay? Hare Krishna. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Anant Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bo.